welcome back to another episode of Football Update. This is Andy.
And this is Robin.
So, season's over. Definitely, excuse me guys, my throat's a little rough. Have a few things going on. You got the Combine happening, and then free agencies coming. We're just on the eve of it, I should say.
Yeah.
There are already some big moves. Some teams, colossal moves, but first, Robin, your thoughts on the Combine.
Yeah, the Combine, I feel like we've always talked about how big the receiver group is, and I feel like there were a ton of guys that ran really fast times. We had the record of Xavier Worthy from Texas at 4.21, and that was probably the most crazy moment of the Combine. They did have all the talk of the three quarterbacks, not really doing any of the drills, but doing interviews. Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jane Daniels. I think those guys kind of know their minimum top 10 picks and probably top 5, so they're not going to, put their, risk anything doing that. Just do it for the teams. I know there was a weird controversy or kind of media-made controversy of the Caleb Williams not doing the medical, but he said he'd only do it for certain teams, and he kind of feels like he knows it's one of two teams and maybe only one team that's going to take him up high. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of did similar, where he didn't do much of anything at the Combine, but I think these guys are still training. They're doing everything that they need to, and they kind of know to an extent where they're going or how high in the draft they're going, so they're not doing anything extra, similar to how the NBA Combine, not everyone attends, and if they get told or promised by one team, their agent will just, pull them out of the Combine drills right then and there. Overall, we have all the rookies that pop up there, and, or potential rookies coming in and pop up there and do some incredible athletic feats. Like the receiver group especially, you have the two guys, Worthy and Mitchell from Texas. We didn't see much of Neighbors or Harrison Jr. at all in the drills, but Adunze from Washington, he looks like a certified top 10 pick. And, there could be as many as, 8 or 9 receivers taken, and that would be a record. But you could put out, 10 different names of guys like McConkey from Georgia, Xavier Legette from South Carolina, both Texas guys, a couple Washington guys, Troy Franklin from Oregon, So, yeah, the Combine is also where, all the agents are talking to all the teams, and they're loosely talking about, how much money we could get for this guy or what this guy's looking for if they want to stay at a certain spot. So the one big trade talk that may or may not have happened there was the Bears maybe looking to see what Justin Fields' value is, and as of right now, it sounds like they're kind of waiting and patiently going along because they're not getting the offers that they want, because he's not really anyone's first choice at this point. But did you have any more thoughts on the Combine, Andy?
Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s lack of being there for certain aspects of the Combine, will that affect their draft position at all, do you think?
I don't think so. I think they probably know where they're going, or I think they both are pretty much guaranteed top 5 picks. It's just a matter of, I think very likely Caleb goes 1, and then Marvin could go as high as 3. And then once you get to 4 and 5, where both the Cardinals and Chargers are, maybe they both want to move down, where the team either wants a quarterback or a tackle, but it would be hard to say no to a player that talented. 6'3", 6'4", can run high 4.4s or, high 4.3s, low 4.4s, with that, ability to run routes at such a larger size being very rare.
So usually you would say that the people people that have been pushed back in their initial spot in years prior is kind of stuff off the field more. So
yeah, and and I don't think there's no player, at least in the top 10, that has anything like a Jalen Carter or Ryan Leaf, where you do question work ethic and everything else. Maybe there's, I don't know, some talk that Caleb's family's involved or they want certain things. But if you did that with every player's probably got weird family members. Maybe the best player in the league, or definitely the best player in the league at this point, Pat Mahomes, has questionable family members. But that's kind of it with like every player.
Absolutely, and then and I heard that the Bills talked to the most wide receivers for the draft, so it's going to be very interesting. I know we're going to talk about the Bills in more detail later on, but do you feel that the Bills might move up if they for the right receiver or their guy? Because I believe we have 11 draft picks.
11 draft picks. Yep, 11 picks, and they had 1 first, a second. They were supposed to have a third compensatory, and they said it's a 4th as of now. I'm not sure if they'll dispute it, and that was for losing Tremaine Edmonds. And I don't know if they make the big move at the trade deadline with Rasul Douglas, where they swap a 5 and a 3. If they probably are thinking, we'll get the 3 back in compensatory form. For a reason, they got a 4, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe it goes down to snap count or something, but based on how much Tremaine Edmonds got free agency and the fact that the Bills didn't really get anyone close to that money-wise, you would think you'd get the 3rd round compensatory. But so they have, 2 4s, 3 5ths, 3 6s, and I believe a 7th. So they have 9 picks on day 3, and you'd have to think, maybe they'd move 1 or 2 of those extra to move up a bit. But the way that they made some moves during the past week, which we'll talk about, they do have potentially a bunch of holes, although they'll do everything they can to get the roster as set as possible for the draft so they can go best available player. But it is definitely a possibility that they look at receivers to go up for. They did talk to Keon Coleman, whose 40 time wasn't great, but every one of the other things, the vertical, other things went pretty good, and he went really well. He was probably the best receiver out of the gauntlet drill, and he was able to run in a straight line about 20 miles per hour, which is much better than even guys like Troy Franklin and Xavier Worthy, who, ran the 40 fast, but for a reason couldn't do that drill very well.
Absolutely. Going to free agency, right now teams are signing people. So is it true? Is it like you can hypothetically sign anyone that's a free agent right now, or how does that work exactly? Because there are some people that haven't been picked up yet.
So you can sign guys that have been cut previously. So Johnny Smith got cut from the Falcons, and he signed, I think, 2 years, $10 million with the Dolphins, and that's because he had been let go. And you can try and sign some of your own guys before they get to free agency. Bills have done a few of those. The big re-signing today was Baker Mayfield, 3 years, $100 million. The Chiefs, 3 years, $95 million guaranteed for Chris Jones, and I think 2 more years on top of that. And then Kevin Byard signed with the Bears at safety. So you can sign guys that have been cut from other teams. You can't necessarily sign the guys that, like a Kirk Cousins, you can't really do anything officially until Wednesday. Now you could get into a verbal agreement with him, I think, right after noon tomorrow, but...
So just players who are cut in your own team. Okay, that does make a little more sense.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, it scratched my head a little bit,
Yeah.
When that happened at first. But what are some of your thoughts on the cuts of teams and additions, and just in general?
So I think the Chris Jones signing, that is the one that basically, for as much talk as Pat Mahomes and before he got traded a couple years ago, Tyreek Hill get, Chris Jones is maybe the next most valuable piece on that team, because an interior rusher that draws 2 or 3 linemen and can still get pressures consistently, a la an Aaron Donald. He's right up there with him for most impactful defensive linemen, maybe defensive players in the league. So keeping him under wraps is big time. It does make you wonder how much that affects their cap, and they have the franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed, so maybe he gets moved very quickly so that they can get under the cap. It's been rumored the Chargers may be looking to trade people. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, they all have big contracts. But I think teams know that there's a decent chance they'd have to cut those guys just to get under the cap, so I don't know if they'll make any moves there. Going through the list of cuts, Michael Thomas finishing up his contract in New Orleans. That's been kind of a thing that's been going to happen for a while. Feels like he was going off on Twitter about, the beat reporter for the New Orleans Times-Picayune basically taking whatever the Saints organization says as gospel in terms of, his attitude and things like that. So he's going to be hitting the market. And then, what is it? The Eagles letting go of Kevin Byard and Avonte Maddox in the secondary. Those are two big names. And then potentially looking at trading Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. So there's going to be a restructure of that entire defense. And it's also a big thing that Fletcher Cox retired today. And then previously in the last week, Jason Kelsey. So he's going to be one of the fun personalities. But as for the Eagles, how much a leadership void is that on both sides of the ball? And are they able to overcome that either with more talent on the field or just players that fit better? The Broncos starting to let go of some guys like Justin Simmons, Russell Wilson, obviously. And so I think they're going to do a reset. They had kind of a little bit of a bounce back after a bad start to the year, and you're thinking, well, maybe they can sort of sneak in the playoffs, and they never did that, but they did show, that they were to some extent able to overachieve from how they started the season, but now they're going to have to, tear it down and then try and find some cheap guys here and there, although they've done a pretty good job of finding people in the last year or two. And then they traded Jerry Jeudy, who was on the last year of his deal, to Cleveland, and now Cleveland has a receiving core that they've acquired, basically late-round picks and pick swaps of Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and now Jeudy. So now they're putting all the pieces in place to theoretically be good all over the place for Deshaun Watson, and if that's not working, potentially Joe Flacco. So those are some of the thoughts of the early cuts that I've seen so far. If you had any, let me know, and then, at some point you want to get into what Buffalo's done.
Yeah, so with Denver, it seemed like, I'd say next to the Bills, the closest seemed to be completely, getting rid of the pieces and stuff like that. And just before the Bills, one thing I took note of this week, and they've mentioned it on GPS this week, it kind of feels like the safety position is now coming the position. It just, and again, we are going to talk about it in depth in a few minutes. It was rough to see Jordan get let go, but at the same time, it seems like you can get one of these hot pieces that might be a few years younger, maybe even the Broncos guy. Or, I don't know, maybe not. But then isn't 10 or 15 kind of top tier guys that are free agents right now?
Yeah, I think the main guys, Kyle Duggar's on the transition tag, but Xavier McKinney from the Giants is out there. Darnell Savage from the Packers is out there. The Seahawks cut a couple guys, Quandre Diggs. Jamal Adams' stock has kind of dropped off, but maybe he fits somewhere for somebody. Geno Stone, I think he was one of, if not the interception leader in the league, and he's now a free agent. Can the Ravens, I know they first gave Justin Matabuke the tag, and then sign him to a contract which reduced that cap hit. Do they still have space to bring him back? I don't know. But yeah, like you said, safety's kind of, unless you're a Kyle Hamilton or Jesse Bates type where, you know, you can do several different things and have insane range, you're not really going to get paid because teams are like willing to play two high safeties and not put any more pressure on their safeties. And put them in one-on-ones and things like that.
One thing I did read, and I apologize, I'm forgetting who was the Broncos safety they let go?
Justin Simmons, yep.
Justin Simmons, geez, there we go. I lost my brain
no problem.
For a second. You could potentially see him maybe foregoing a big contract just to maybe get a ring, possibly.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, the poor guy, even Brandon Farnell, who we love from That's Good Sports, you know, said he had to suffer his entire career with the Broncos, you know. And I feel for Broncos fans, you know, it's a great fan base, you know, great team. But, so it's going to be interesting, and I think, I don't know about you, Rob, but like just this depth of safeties, I feel like the Bills might sign one and not do one of the first one or two picks on a safety.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they might grab someone in the draft, but maybe later on. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I could see them connected to Cam Kitchens out of Miami, second round. Like, there's no high-level first-round safeties as of now. Tyler Newman from Minnesota has been a name. Darian Taylor Demerson from Texas Tech has been a riser at that spot. But I do look at lower-level free agents. Jeremy Chin from Carolina would be an interesting one. Louis Gilman from the Los Angeles Chargers. Darnell Savage from the Packers. There's probably a list of more and more and more, but with the market, as you said, kind of pretty big for safeties, it does leave the opportunity for maybe, you know, Brand Bean to play the market, and then they did bring back, the contract looked bigger than it actually, you know, is for Taylor Rapp. It was reported at 3 years, 14.5. It's really incentive-based, and the first-year cap hit is just under $3 million, 2.9, and they can get out of the contract in a year if need be. And I know early in the season it didn't look great for him, but I feel like he was kind of, third safety was a new thing for him. And he probably played some more hide stuff when he's more of a Poyer type of player in terms of down in the box, making tackles in the run game. And down the stretch, I thought he played really good football, especially when they went to Poyer as a dime linebacker and Taylor Rapp playing back at strong safety. And then, you know, made two huge plays on that last drive against Miami, defending a pass against Tyreek Hill and then intercepting the one that sealed the game. Unfortunately, got banged up on it. But, you know, I think getting him and another safety in through free agency, you're not set at the position necessarily, but you do, you know, if you can get a nice bargain free agent, maybe keep Cam Lewis, who has some experience and versatility, and then go into the draft and try and find another young piece.
So, yeah, like you said, it just, I think the Bills and other teams are blessed, you know, that not only does the market is lower price tag for free agents, but also some of the higher drafted, sought after safeties will probably be pushed later on in the draft.
Yeah.
Essentially. So moving on to the Bills, you know, it hurt me seeing a lot of these players go.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I got to give props to Brandon Beane. You know, I think he's one of the best GMs, and he's not doing what this is why I think New Orleans is so bad the past how many years since Peyton left and Breeze left is they kept kicking the can down the road every single year. It's kind of like now. Yeah. And again, just, you know, it hurts that it had to be done. But the last thing I'll say before you take over is, like, some people were criticizing about Vaughn. It's like, you got to give Vaughn credit. He purposely reduced his load and had it incentive based.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it was like $17.5 million guaranteed originally, but like he not only could go back up to that depending on how good of a year you know he could have hypothetically next year. I think there's like an additional few million if he wins a Super Bowl or something like that. So, I do think he is going to kind of have a bounce. Because, again, he was still coming back from injury, I think. And I think he's incentivizing himself. But just your thoughts on all the Bills moves.
Yeah, the Vaughn one, I think it's like $8.65 million they saved. And then the incentives are NTLB, not likely to be earned. So they're like 10 sacks, 11 sacks, 12 sacks, 14, 16, So if he gets up to that type of level, you're gaining. And if he gets close to it, 8 or 9, he's probably not reaching that. And I think any incentive he gets would be pushed to next year's cap. So it did help them quite a bit. And the big thing about, not restructuring deals is the two they could have restructured and got under the cap without releasing players were Stephon Diggs and Von Miller. But I think they are preparing for the possibility that in 2025, they can get out of those contracts, whether it's a post-June 1st cut or before, and then maybe look to move off those if those players don't play at a higher level. Dawson Knox may be in that same category too. So they were able to get under the cap without suffering or surrendering future flexibility. The one like Poyer, that one's a tough one, but 33-year-old safety, you save $6+ million, by letting him go. Maybe you can get the price. You get 2 for the price of what you let him go for in terms of the space that his release creates, hopefully. Naheem Hines would have liked to have worked out. Unfortunately, the off-field injury, which, again, not his fault at all, but, is what it is. Cyron Neal, great special teams guy, but, special teams not necessarily as big thing in the game as it used to be. Deontay Hardy had the great return against Miami, a couple plays here and there, but I feel like you're trying to find somebody cheap at that return/speed receiver position potentially. The Mitch Morse one, and then, letting him go was the tough one because he was playing at such a high level. But there's always been talk about the concussions and everything else, and he was able to stay fortunately healthy. But at 32, maybe you're thinking, not many years left, and you need to get under the cap anyway, so let him go. Move McGovern to center. They like David Edwards a lot as that 6th offensive lineman, extra tight end. And now they're giving him a chance at right guard potentially. They trade Bates for a 5th-round pick, to save a little bit of money. And he was always propped up as the next guy in line at center. But maybe they feel like they can get cheaper at that backup lineman position and maybe find somebody in the draft or something to do that. So, a lot of guys that you wished were there to win a Super Bowl, especially Poyer and Hyde. That's, a 6-7 year combination that they were brought in as not super heralded free agents, and for them to be in that backfield so long is spectacular, but, age does catch up with everyone.
Yeah, I just hope if we ever do get to one, they can have like an honorary ring or something like that.
Yeah, and then
they really embraced the culture that Sean McDermott built. But it's just and I'm just it's hurts definitely, but I'm happy that they ripped it off now instead.
Ripped off the Band-Aid. Yeah.
And again, like I think personally, like they finally let go of Michael Thomas. I think the Saints are going to at least need a few years to. Again, it's just my personal opinion. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but like, I don't know. It just feels like they're going to have a reboot at some point.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then
the person who took over, he was one of Peyton's coordinators. Correct?
Yeah, Dennis Allis, the defense coordinator, which he's not bad at defense.
No, but it just feels like the team is it's a Sean Payton team without Sean Payton.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just think they have some rough stuff going on
and
there.
Then the Trey White cut was definitely painful too, just because his last play is. Oof. Yeah.
And then, just lastly before we go, Robin, what are your thoughts on who the Bills might draft first, and maybe some free agent signings you'll see coming up.
So in terms of draft, I think, you have to see how free agency goes for the most part. I do think, everyone's going to want receiver, and I'm going to want one too. I definitely think the ideal thing is to find that number 2 that can become a number 1. I'm a bigger proponent of taking, a receiver with some size and some ability, a Downey Mitchell from Texas with the 4.35 speed, weighs 6'3", 6'4", 200 pounds. So there's some size and girth there. Xavier Legette, I really like his story from South Carolina. He's played some special teams in college, didn't get some playing on very late in his career, and then, burst on and had a big time year this past year, and, had a 4.39, 40, 41 inch vertical, I think. And, again, you don't want to get into comparisons because it's just, they're not saying, oh, this guy's going to be this player. We're just saying, oh, he has a similar body type and plays similar brand. And Xavier Legette gets compared to A.J. Brown, and that type of player would be really great for that offense, or at least somebody that has that type of physical frame and ability. And, you want that. I don't love the idea of making that guy who's going to be your number 2 initially and then propping up to your number 1 eventually, having it be someone, a smaller stature guy, because building around a smaller receiver, I don't know if they were, able to withstand all the hits and punishment that they would take. So as intriguing as someone like Xavier Worthy would be to have those 60, 70-yard bombs from Josh Allen, I'd be a little concerned about that, but, so I could see them go late, second round, go after safety. That would probably be the primary position I'd look at in the second round. And then just depth across the board. People just to make Josh Allen's job easier, free agency wise. Maybe a power back. I do like finding a way to keep Ty Johnson if possible.
I would even say maybe bring Fournette back. He did pretty decent for what he was brought in for.
Yeah, I could see that one. Someone had rumored Zeke, who's great in pass protection and short yardage, even though his yard per carry average was really down for New England. Laviska Shenault's a guy at receiver, who has the ability to catch screens and be like a, gadget player and run the ball. Same with, to a bigger extent, even Curtis Samuel, who had like a massive year the one year he had Joe Brady calling plays in Carolina. I just don't know if the market would be there for the Bills and if someone would be willing to go higher. So, again, like Brand Bean even said at the end of your press conference that they're not going to go to the high-end stores, like you would in New York City. They're going to try and play the bargain market game as much as humanly possible. Maybe, hopefully, try and bring back some D linemen like Daquan Jones and A.J. Epinesa. Maybe clear up some more cap space by signing guys like Deion Dawkins and Teron Johnson to extensions. And as for kind of the rest of the league, Kirk Cousins, does he go back to Minnesota or does he go to Atlanta? That's kind of like the big one we're all waiting on, because it could set off a dominoes of what remaining free agent quarterbacks do, whether it's for spot starter or backup roles across the board. What happens with the Justin Fields as a result of that? So that's the big move that we're waiting on tomorrow, I think. Pass rushers, Danielle Hunter, Bryce Huff, Jonathan Grenard. Calvin Ridley's the big wide receiver on the market. And then, again, second straight year, we have that running back market with a bunch of theoretically high-end guys, but they all got a year older, and teams kind of want to push that market in terms of price down. Saquon, Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift. And then the tight end market's taking a hit with both Dalton Schultz re-signing, Hunter Henry re-signing. Big one out there is still Noah Fant, Tyron Smith at tackle, Trent Brown at tackle. Robert Hunt at guard is the one big free agent there since Kevin Dotson re-signed with the Rams. And then a few centers are out there, like an Evan Brown from Seattle, and I think a few other high-end guys. And Mitch Morris is now added to that mix too, so that's going to be a position where it's a decent draft form and also free agents. I'm trying to think. There's, and then there's guys that are names but have kind of tailed off. Like an Odell Beckham or Michael Thomas.
Yeah, then what? I don't.
And Gabe Davis, I just remember that at receiver too.
Yeah, again, probably won't happen, but the Bills would try to maybe trade for DeAndre Hopkins again because from what I'm looking, the Titans have like $80 million in cap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I can see them possibly doing something because it feels like the Titans are more just kind of rebuilding, this year and probably want as many draft picks as possible.
Yeah, and then, they could be big spenders. The Texans have a surprising amount of cap space, and the Colts too. Christian Wilkins is the big interior lineman still out there because Metabuke and Chris Jones got signed. And then linebackers, Patrick Queen, Jordan Brooks. But, yeah, those are some of the big names. But it's going to be a fun offseason in general. But, tomorrow at noon could start getting crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how high he would be at price, but if the Bills could bring back even Leonard Floyd, that'd be great.
Yeah, or Ebenezer, yeah, and then Commanders, yeah.
Yeah, so very exciting. So we'll talk to you guys definitely in the next week or week and a half. When see how the free agency landscape goes, because if I recall, there usually is a few people like the week after it officially begins that still slide through.
Yeah, and there's even guys after the draft in June 1st where compensatory pick formula isn't a part of the thing, and if you sign a guy after May, then it doesn't count against you in that facet.
Yeah, so this is always a very exciting time of year for football. But that's another football update. This is Andy.
And this is Robin.
Have a good week.